The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Monday, February 12th, Tuesday, February 13th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. I hope you had a great day and night as we are live right here in the Great White North, in the Caribou region on top of the snowy mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong, nightly on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on The Fringe FM, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. We are all over social media. We are on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, live on periscope.tv. Hi, everyone. We are on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for our archives. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website, of course, spacedoutradio.com. And, of course, we have our GoFundMe account going on right now, trying to raise funds to build a brand new studio. Head to GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. That's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. If you head to our website, spaceoutradio.com, you can do a little shopping at our store. Read up on the Encounter Online, dealing with everything paranormal, strange, and odd, including my latest blog there as well. We also got some great videos from Tim Doyle's UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV and so much more. Many people claim to have seen UFOs flying in the night skies, but few, comparatively, have claimed to have actual contact with extraterrestrials. It's something that happens. When it does, it's either 1, an absolute nightmare, 2, confusion, or 3, a very cool and peaceful experience that you wish to happen again and again. However, you're not the one in control. Tom Sanger has had an alien creeping around his Arizona home. Now, around here, all of you know about Carl. Well, I had a good laugh with this earlier today. Tom actually nicknamed his alien Roger. So we're going to find out tonight if Roger and Carl actually know each other first and foremost, because that's kind of important. He also has some great videos that Tom has shot over his Tucson home, been featured on television and internet sites like the Black Vault. Tom Sanger, we welcome you to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Good to have you with us to kick off a brand new week. How are you?
Doing okay, recovering from the flu, you can tell by my voice.
I know the feeling around here. Knock on wood, haven't got it yet. But that's okay. That's okay. Tom, I want to say thank you for coming on in and chatting with us tonight because, you know, we are very, very, well, we're just the type of people. We like good old-fashioned alien talk around here. I'm not going to lie. We like good old-fashioned alien talk here. So when you started, before any of your experiences started, did you ever believe that this would be your path? That this is what was going to happen?
Oh, no, not in the slightest, no. No, this was absolutely abrupt when it all started.
Take us back.
So I was not someone who really looked into the subject or anything like that when it started.
Did you, Tom, try and understand, you know, before all this happened, what this field of ufology was about? Was it on your radar, anything like that?
No, it wasn't really on my radar at all. We had an experience, in 1984 or 5, something like that, where we went a little hike and camped up in the North Cascades. We were sitting by a fire, and this light, looked like a satellite, was coming by. And I expected it to go by this tree, and it never went on the other side. And my friend said, wait a minute, that just did a 90-degree angle straight down. So that was really my only experience before it all really started to happen.
Take us back to that moment. You mentioned it made a 90-degree turn. Was that the first one you'd ever seen? Did you believe in UFOs before that?
I had an open mind to it, but it wasn't something that I had any real interest in. And even after that happened, it's kind of funny because I didn't see it through the 90 degrees, so it didn't have the same effect as if I had actually seen it do that. Because it went right down the tree line, so I didn't get to see it do its turn.
Mm-hmm. How long was it between that incident happening and then when all of a sudden everything just kind of blew up for you and started happening on a regular basis?
Yeah, that would be, it might have been a little later than 84. Excuse me, but everything kind of blew up in 1988, early 1988.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dating myself now, so there you go.
Mm. And I understand that because as an experiencer, most of our other listeners around here are experiencers one way or another. Everybody has a story with it. Were you one of those people before it really started happening to you that was kind of, you know, one of the goofball type people who you know, publicly would be like, oh, those UFO people, they're just a bunch of wingnuts. You know, nothing like that ever happens. Like, why would they land on the White House lawn? You know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, well, you know, back in those days, that's pre-internet, and I had no interest whatsoever. It's not something I even talked about or even looked into, so I didn't have an opinion on it, other than, you know, if it happened, I guess. I didn't even think in terms of if it happened, but I'd be open-minded to it, you know. But it wasn't on my radar at all, just zero.
So what all of a sudden started happening? Take us through, you learning about UFOs and what happened with you to start putting you on this path.
Well, it was very, very abrupt. I was a backpacker. I lived in Seattle, and I'd gone up to Tiger Mountain, which is just outside Seattle. It's not up actually in the Cascades. So I went up there in the winter, which was stupid, and it was raining, which is doubly stupid. And I set up my tent and had a very strange experience at night where I woke up and everything seemed odd. And I was working at a daycare part-time. Was the only way we could afford my 4-year-old's tuition at this daycare. So I worked there a couple hours. And this kid walked up and said, "You have a strange hole in the side of your face." I thought, what the heck are they talking about? So what happened after that is I was sitting in this room in Seattle, and I had just read Missing Time by, who's the author of Missing Time? Shoot. Anyway, famous artist and therapist. Anyway, I just read that book, and I went, wow, this isn't talking about Betty and Barney Hill. This is talking about this could happen to anybody. So I thought the therapy part in this book, Bud Hopkins, the author, of course, Bud Hopkins, I thought the therapy part of this book was they didn't do that great a job. So I decided, oddly, to write a letter to Bud Hopkins, care of his publisher or whatever, saying, that could have been a little bit better. So I sit down and I start writing, "Dear Mr. Hopkins, I believe this experience has happened to me. I have a strange mole on the side of my face. I get up, go in the bathroom, and scratch this strange mole, and it's a scab that came off, and I still have this indentation hole in the side of my cheek, and my psychological or emotional legs came right out from under me. I was in absolute dramatic shock instantly, which makes no sense, right, in normal activity. And I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything for the whole day. And I finally went over to friends in this, absolutely traumatized state. And instead of them freaking out, they just had me sit down and relax. And I started trying to talk, and the words that came out, and this is very significant actually, was, and I had to kind of, force these words out, was, "If you remember this, it will kill you." And as soon as I was able to get that out, boom, I could talk again. I was pretty much a normal person. So then it went on from there with other really strange, surreal things that happened. But I kind of evolved out of all this weirdness and chaos very quickly, and realized, now, wait a minute. There's just no way that in this vast universe, if there are ETs out there, that they're all going to be negative. So I decided to just put myself out there and not worry about the ramifications. So I'd wake up at like midnight, 1 in the morning, drive all the way out to Issaquah, which I think is about 45-mile drive, like midnight. And I went to this Weyerhaeuser clear cut that had the oddest little hill that looked just like Devil's Tower, but it was a tiny little thing. And I'm in this Weyerhaeuser clear cut, and I'm near Mount Si. So if anybody in the Seattle or Northwest area knows about Mount Si. It's a mountain, but not in the going all the way back into the Cascades. It's a very well hiked mountain, but I'm right in that area. And I had this sleeping bag that you could see through, and it was way too small for me. So I should be tossing and turning and all this. So I'd go to sleep, and I'd wake up, and the sun was well up. I get in my car, try to drive. I could barely drive. I went out there several times. I'd have to pull over the side of the road, sleep for a couple hours. I was all messed up. And I realized, due to the fact that I read Bud Hopkins' book, that I was having these big missing time experiences. But I put myself out there to have contact with ETs, whether good or bad. I just said, to heck with it, you know. And the only things I got out of it, as far as memories, out of all these times I went out, was a row of lights and loss of pyramids. And the row of lights will, as we talk, that will become highly significant. The loss of pyramids, I have no idea what that was about. So I went from there, I kind of got this message, you might say, that, okay, enough of this stuff going to this crappy little clear cut, all this weird, traumatic missing time, and I knew I needed to go somewhere else. So I was a big backpacker. I had 101 hikes in the North Cascades book. And I look at this hike to Winchester Mountain, and here in almost microscopic print, it says the Pleiades, which is an actual part of this mountain called Mount Larrabee, which is on the Canadian border. And that was pretty obvious for me at that time that that's where I needed to go. And then the real experiences started after that occurred.
When you saw this, what shape was this craft that you saw, or this anomalous object, or whatever you want to call it?
When you say craft, or at what time?
When you were up on the mountain there, did you see anything?
No, didn't see anything. I actually just slept like a rock through the whole night, well into the morning. The sun was well up in this sleeping bag that was way too small for me. I mean, I should have been tossing and turning. Said I was just out, and then I was awake. So I understand it now, what was happening, but back then, of course, it was very confusing. I did understand then that I was experiencing missing time, though. I did understand that.
How did you get the feeling that you were missing time, though? How did you get the feeling you were missing time, Tom?
Well, I had read the book Missing Time, and again, it was different than all other books in that this experience could happen to anybody. And, you know, there were some things in there about missing time, obviously, because that's the name of the book. But I knew that there's no way that it was normal for me to be in this terrible sleeping bag and not be waking up every 15 minutes in misery in this thing and just being out like a rock and then not even be able to drive. I could not drive. I had to pull over sometimes for 2 hours, put the seat back, and get some sleep. It made no sense, and I realized I'd gone out there with the purpose for having whatever kind of contact experience, you know, there was going to be, and it was pretty clear I was actually having that experience. So again, I mean, I wasn't getting anything other than the two things of a row of lights and loss of pyramids. That was my going out there multiple times, and I was leaving Seattle like at midnight or 1 in the morning, which was really pretty odd.
So when you had this experience, what felt, besides just the sleep, was there any feeling, any markings, or anything that made you feel different than what you had gone up there before and felt like?
No, no markings at all. Excuse me. I just had a sense that, like a deeper sense that I knew I should be doing this, and I knew something profound was occurring. I just knew this. It was on just a deeper level. I just knew it. So it's kind of hard to describe because most people, of course, are going to think this is just weird, or they're going to run from doing something like this, going out in the boonies and trying to contact ETs. But on that deeper sense, and I think a lot of your listeners will understand this, on this deeper sense, I just knew that this is what I needed to be doing.
At that point, when you had that experience, did you feel that this was something that you needed to look into a little deeper? Like, what was this what triggered it, or did you wait for something else to happen?
I felt like I had completed a phase of what I needed to be doing, and that I needed to move on. It was kind of a message. It's not like a voice in my head. It was just a knowingness that I knew that this phase was over in this lousy, clear cut, no less, in a terrible sleeping bag going out in the middle. I mean, logically, it made no sense. So I knew I got the message that that phase was over and I needed to move into the next phase.
Right. So when this incident happened, did everything just start happening right quickly after that to you? Or was there another amount of time that happened before things started getting really real for you?
No, it was actually very, very quick. I mean, it wasn't a matter of weeks or months. It was, I can't remember that far back, but no, it was very quick. So the next phase, because I realized that the negative element stuff of all this, with abductions and paranoia about being abducted and all that, is very, very limiting. And there's no way the universe out there is that limited, that there's just these little gray ETs who abduct you and whatever, do experiments and, these horrifying things. I thought, no way, come on, there's got to be a positive element. So, again, down on that deeper level, I knew to pursue the positive, sort of to understand that the negative is probably there, but to pursue the positive. So that's when I and others started going up to this mountain that has kind of a ridge, a jagged ridge running off of it, called the Pleiades. Anybody can look that up. Just look up Pleiades hikes Mount Baker, and you're going to see that's an actual location up there that you can go up to.
And Mount Baker, I have skied probably 40, 50 times. And when I lived right across the border in Mission, British Columbia, when we had a southern exposure at our house, and Mount Baker, from where I grew up, I mean, it was everywhere. Everywhere you go in the valley there, in the Fraser Valley of the British Columbia side, Mount Baker was right there. And I remember a few years ago, when we were outside on a sunny summer night, we actually watched 4 UFOs sitting on top of the mountain. So,
wow.
Knowing that you were at Mount Baker and there is a lot of action around there, it doesn't surprise me. Now, on the south side of Mount Baker, good friends of this show from Forest Moon Paranormal, Corey Rees and Eric Cooper, live on the other side in Concrete, Washington.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I have a connection with Concrete. Yeah, go ahead.
Beautiful little town. Beautiful little town. I love it there. I've spoke there the last 2 paranormal conferences that they've had. And I can tell you this, there is a lot of weird things that happen around Mount Baker, whether it's Sasquatch reports, UFO reports, alien reports, and it just seems like it doesn't matter what volcano you're around along the Pacific coast, there always seems to be that kind of action.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we had certain things happen up there, but later on I started taking little groups of people up there to that mountain. You can hike up this mountain called Winchester Mountain. It has an old fire lookout that's been converted by the Mount Baker Hiking Club. It's fantastic. They put a bunk in and a Coleman stove and all. Anybody can use it, right? So I'd take people up there, and this family would go up there with me. And where were they from? Concrete, Washington. They said they saw so many UFOs there all the time. It was just a normal thing. And I invited the one person again just a couple of years ago, and she said, yeah, I'm so tired of seeing UFOs. I'm really not even interested in going up there anymore with your group. That's so funny, though. Concrete, Washington, that was where they're from.
Well, we actually came down last year when we went to the Four Spoon Paracon. We drove, we took the long route. We went through, I believe it's called Omak, Washington, the border crossing, just a small little. It's one gas station. That's all it is.
Yep.
Is one gas station on the border. It's hilarious.
That county in Washington up there.
Yeah.
County has one stoplight.
Yes,
it
does.
It doesn't have red or gray. It's just a blinking yellow light in the county.
It's amazing. You're literally in the middle of nowhere in Washington State. And when we drove through the mountains on I-20 to get to Concrete, I mean, some of the mountainsides in there were absolutely phenomenal. We pulled into this old rustic town that had been there for probably 150 years. The name is escaping my mind right now. But we go into the stores and everything is Sasquatch in these stores. Everything is Sasquatch.
I know the town you're talking about. I can't think of it either.
So
they turned it into almost like a 1800s type town.
Yes. And there were tourists everywhere. There were tourists everywhere. And then I had no idea.
Winthrop, I think it is.
Winthrop, that's right. And so we continued on through there, and I had no idea that we'd run into Concrete from that area. But, I mean, next thing I know, I'm like, this is starting to look kind of familiar. And then all of a sudden the sign says, welcome to Concrete. I'm like, holy cow, we're here. Look at that. But, there is a lot of weird things that happen along that northern ridge. And once again, whether it's Mount Baker, whether it's Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, all the way down to Mount Shasta, it seems like all around these volcanoes is where we are getting a lot of action from UFOs. Do you buy into the theory, Tom, and I don't know if you've ever looked into this, but have you ever bought into the theory that maybe these volcanoes have something to do with, the way these ships fill up, or maybe they're looking for minerals or something to keep their ships going?
Well, there's certainly energy centers in one way or the other. I wouldn't call, some people say vortexes or whatever. I wouldn't go that far. But volcanoes, look at Mount St. Helens, how powerful that was when it went off. So it's definitely energy happening there. So that could be a factor. And it could also be a factor of the ring of fire might be almost like a channel of energy, because you can go all the way down in Mexico, South America, and all that, and you're going to get the same thing with volcanoes and UFOs.
No, it is very, very interesting in regards to that. And you have to wonder if there is something or some sort of connection around the volcanoes, because Mount Baker, for as beautiful as it is, I'll never forget, myself, Mrs. Spaced Out Radio, a good friend of ours in this show, Samantha Mowat, and my daughters were sitting on our patio, and we were watching these 4 lights. One was yellow, one was orange, one was white, one was a mixture of the different colors, and they were just sitting there like they were parked on top of the mountain, like right at the crest of the volcano, right up top. And you know how I guess for you, you'd be looking north, so on the west side of the mountain, it kind of goes into those sharp peaks from the volcano, and they were kind of lined up along there. It was pretty phenomenal.
Well, we'd actually be looking south. We'd be north of Mount Baker.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So exactly.
The Pleiades Mountain is actually half of it's in the U.S. and half of it's in Canada. So it's got 2 peaks on the left side of Mount Larrabee, which is part of that little section there. And one is called American Border Peak, and then the one farther back from us is called Canadian Border Peak, because it's in Canada and the other's in the U.S. So our viewpoint of Baker is looking at Baker, looking south. So you're acquainted with Artist Point up there, since you ski.
We used to ski Mount Baker quite a bit. I mean, it was cheaper to go skiing at Baker for the day than to go to any of the local mountains. So we would just head down to Baker. It was only about an hour drive for us, so it was easy for us to get down there.
You probably went through Sumas, huh?
Oh yeah, well I lived right across the border from Sumas.
Oh, there you go, that little shortcut, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Artist Point is where Highway 542, the Mount Baker Highway, goes up and up and up and up to that big parking lot up there, and that's Artist Point. Well, you know Michael Hall, and you know Lee Strauss. They've been on the show.
Yes, Michael W. Hall is a good friend of this show, absolutely.
Yeah, so they were up there. I wasn't up there at that time. I was in Tucson. But they were up there with the camera I'd given Lee, and it's a night vision color camera. Unfortunately, he's a fantastic photographer, but he had his cheap tripod. The wind was howling. It was freezing cold. He'd never used my camera before. But they were up there at Artist Point looking at Mount Baker and the Pleiades, and these lights showed up, just exactly what you're talking about, over Mount Baker, different colored lights. And they'd actually change color. They'd go from green to red and all that. They were just so excited to see that. They were probably, I think that's 10 miles, maybe a little more than that, from where they are looking at that, and these lights were up there over those mountains. So that's really interesting you had that experience, because that's pretty much what they had.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal sight. I mean, don't forget, I live 10 miles north of the Sumas border. So you're right there. Yeah, I mean, the view that I had from my house up on the mountainside where I lived, I could literally watch the fireworks down in Sumas and into Linden, Washington during the 4th of July. It was fantastic. So to get a view of Mount Baker, I mean, I could literally, I wake up in the morning and the sun is rising, and I got Mount Baker right there. So it's
right there, yeah.
Yeah, it's 55, 60 miles away. So it was maybe even closer.
That's really interesting, because you saw 4 lights and they saw 4 lights. And their lights were different colors and then changing colors. And Michael had binoculars, and he was saying, change to blue. And it would change to blue. And he'd say, change to green. And then one of them would change to green. So that's amazing that you had virtually the same experience they did.
And Michael's a very good friend of this show, so for people who are wondering which Michael we're talking about, Michael W. Hall, he's from the UFO team in Washington State, also for the last 30 years has been Peter Davenport's lawyer, famed ufologist Peter Davenport. So that's who we're talking about when we talk about Michael. Michael also helps out this show with some legal stuff in the U.S., so that way, you know, we're all good and dandy down there as well. So it's very, very interesting that there is all this connection around Mount Baker. So when you started seeing these lights around Mount Baker, at that point, were you getting ET contact as well?
Well, I was not there at that time, and that was only, I think, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. But my primary experience up there was in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a hike up there. It's called Gold Run Pass, and you got to hike. I think it's about 2 miles, and you go up pretty steep. I wouldn't call it a mountain, but anyway, you get up to this pass called Gold Run Pass, and there's Mount Larrabee and the Pleiades, just boom, right there. So my friend Corrine, who was not really into this, but she was also, it sounds okay to me, sort of thing, you know. We hiked along the ridgeline, set up our tent, and my tent was a big tent for backpacking. It had a big door that we faced to Mount Larrabee and the Pleiades, and then it had another, it was kind of like a window, but it was big, and it was facing Mount Baker. So this was 1989, pre-CDs and all that. So I had this tape player, and we were out there freezing cold, playing these kind of new agey tapes to put us in a mood, you know. And we were watching lights and their airplanes. And, shoot, you know. And we were out there a good hour or something, and we went, heck with it, I give up. So we go in the tent, and now we can see American Border Peak, Mount Larrabee, and the Pleiades in this big tent door. I had brought up the hardcover book by Wendell Stevens of UFO Contact from Reticulum. I think it was Reticulum or Reticuli. I think Reticulum. I brought this up backtracking, this heavy book, which made no sense. And we're sitting in the tent, and I decide I'm going to read, a little bit out of this book, Betty Bye story for Corrine, so she can go to sleep, So she's in her sleeping bag to the left of me. We already have her boots off, and I start reading out of this book, and I kid you not, I don't think it's the exact words, but it's the same thing. The very first, I just opened it to anything because I didn't care. The very first thing I read is I looked straight ahead of me. And immediately, she sits bolt upright. She says, "What's that?" Now, as you know, there's a kind of a corridor of air traffic going from Vancouver from west to east, going back behind that mountain range. So we're watching, jets go by all night. Well, this looks like another jet, and yet, she's sitting up. She's saying, "What's that?" Which is odd. We look at this thing going across, goes between American Border Peak and Mount Larrabee, and stops dead. Just, not gradually, just boom, stopped dead, and did a 90-degree angle, not directly over us, but slightly to the west. No running lights, nothing. And I held my thumb up to kind of get an idea if it was going on a straight trajectory, and it was kind of doing a little jerky motion as it went. So Corrine, being a trooper, I'm not joking about this. We're both, this door to the tent is really big. We're both sitting in the door of the tent, putting our boots on, so we can go down to this kind of lower meadow area, so we can go get picked up by the ETs. I'm not joking yet. And she wasn't even into this stuff, but she was so excited. So we go down there, and it's all this UFO now has gone all the way down to Mount Baker, and it kind of goes back and forth. And the next thing we know, we had to go down, I don't know, 50 yards or something. Next thing we know, we're back at the tent, and we're in this super altered high state. And then we just go back in the tent and go to sleep. Now this is a person who's just your average suburban, I wouldn't say average, but she's a suburban type person, she joined this hiking club, her kids were grown up. She's not into any of the stuff. For the next month, she was climbing the wall. She was calling me at 2 a.m. saying, I can't deal with this energy and things that are happening to her. And I talked to her recently, and her quote was, the whole universe opened for her. And it was too much. It was just this unfolding, of spiritual unfolding. Well, years later, way up in 1990-something, I was working with a professional therapist here in Tucson, and he was doing regression work with me with ET stuff. And we went to that incident, and indeed, we actually had been on board with this guy, and this is where the Roger thing comes in. And he's maybe 4 feet tall, and I'm having telepathic communication with him. And he's actually has a really dry sense of humor. But they took us off planet, and we were able to actually observe the entire Earth, and we got the message that it was, there's plant life and animal life and all that, but the entire Earth has a beingness about it, like Gaia, something like that, along those lines. And we were also told that these mountains up there worked in a way, kind of a grid with other locations. And that's about all I remembered from that, but that session was very, very real to me, that this had actually happened. It certainly explained, you don't just go from a meadow and suddenly you're a tent and you're in this just blown out state where you weren't before. So that was our major experience up there.
Did you ever see the beings that were taking you? Did you recall who they were, what they were?
Yeah, the funny thing is, initially when I used to go to that clear cut, I had a feeling I was somehow working with beings from Zeta Reticula. Well, here we go up to Go Run Pass, and I'm backpacking this hardcover book, UFO Contact from Reticulum, and as soon as I say something out of it, they show up. So it was pretty clear to me that we were dealing with folks from Zeta Reticula. And then this being, he has, the big eyes and all that. I don't know if he's 4 feet. He's probably a little less than that. But he's like a liaison between other ETs and Earth humans. He's kind of like chosen and volunteered to do this task because he's really good at it, with communicating with people.
So when you started having these experiences with this, I'm going to call it, was he a gray? Is that what he was?
I hate that term because I think, from what I've heard of other people say, and also from my regression work, this civilization from Zeta Reticula, they're really ancient. They had some kind of split, and some of them went to the, you might say, the dark side, and they do the abductions and all that. And I think they're really kind of degenerate types that have gray skin, and, you know, they're kind of creepy. And I didn't get a sense of, he was actually wearing something, but I didn't get that sense of gray with him, even though they're probably from the same civilization. You know, if you had contact with this being, you wouldn't consider him a gray.
Right.
But that would be where he's from, and it was a he, from Zeta Reticula.
The big black eyes, the big head.
Yes.
Sounds like Carl.
There you go.
Sounds like Carl, although I have no idea where Carl is from, to be honest. I haven't been able to figure that out yet.
Yeah, Lee Strauss, who was on the show with Michael Hall, he's had extensive contact experience with his contact being, who also is very similar.
So when you were having these past life or these regression therapy sessions, what made you decide that this was something you needed to do in order to figure out what was going on?
I'd already dabbled in, not as a professional, but with therapy work. And it was kind of funny. You know Robert Dean? I believe he's deceased now, but Robert.
Yes.
Yeah, Robert Dean lived in Tucson, and he started the thing, an organization called Stargate. And he wanted to have hotlines set up with all these professional therapists where people could call in with their, you know, experiences or trauma or whatever and be able to talk to a therapist. So just for the heck of it, I called in and talked to this gentleman who is a professional therapist here in Tucson. And we got together and we started doing these sessions. We actually did several years of session work. So it wasn't something I was, you know, sort of needing because of trauma. It just kind of fell together, one of those things. Somehow I'd read about it. You know, there used to be New Age bookstores all over the place. Of course, those are kind of fallen out because of the internet. But I think I had gotten some flyer or something at a bookstore or whatever about Stargate.
So when you decided to go under the regression therapy, were you hopeful you were going to have something come forward on that, or was it something that you took a long time to decide to do because maybe you didn't believe in the therapy?
No, I felt pretty confident. This therapist is very, very good. He doesn't lead the witness or anything like that. So once I started talking with him, I thought, well, you know, I'm having these adventures, you know. Well, this is another phase of the adventure to see what's there. And, you know, in some ways I took it with a grain of salt because, I don't know, you know, regression work, some people say, well, maybe you're making stuff up. But the more we went through the sessions, the more solid it really became. It became obvious that we were looking at real stuff. And then he had also worked with other people. He had a regular profession, but this is a sideline. He'd work with other people having to do with ET stuff, so he was, you know, pretty qualified to work with me on that. But he, you know, I'll give you an example. There's therapists who, the therapists say, well, you know, where are you? How old are you? Oh, I'm 11 years old. I'm lying in bed at night. And, well, what's happening there? Well, there's something at the foot of my bed. And the therapist will say, is it an extraterrestrial? You know, leading the witness, right? So this gentleman would just simply say, well, take a look. and not lead me at all. So I'd have to come out with the information rather than having these little preconceived notions of the therapist being thrown in there, just messing up the session. So to me, and the one that really got me, because we were looking at all kinds of stuff for a long time that had nothing to do with just plain old abduction. And this one time, just I don't know why, I just went into this abduction incident with this ET about 6 inches from my face, going into my mind. I'm looking in his eyes. I'm paralyzed. And man, the trauma of that incident, holy mackerel, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even talk. He timed it. He said it was, I think, 5 or 6 minutes that I couldn't even talk. But that was just so incredibly powerful and real. I actually experienced emotions I had no words for because they don't exist in the normal human interactions and so on. These were foreign emotions, and I was trying to explain it to him, but I couldn't. It was the darndest thing. And also his eyes were so deep. They were deep. It was almost like looking into the universe itself. But he was not a good guy. He was going into my mind. I'm not sure what he was doing, but he was literally, 6 inches from my face with those big eyes.
It is very intimidating to see a gray or an extraterrestrial, no matter what species it is, that up close and personal. Now, it's something that I have had experience with myself, and I know 2 times I was fully awake, 3 times. It was fully awake when it happened, and, it's intimidating. It's very intimidating because your mind can't really comprehend the situation as it is happening. Did you have that happen as well?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't expect this because we were looking at other stuff in these sessions, and just out of the blue, here's this thing. And, I already knew about abductions, but to actually experience that in the session was indescribable because, like I say, there were these emotions that I have no words for, I've never experienced before, and also the power of it where I was so traumatized I couldn't even talk in the session. And, you hear people, I love it when people say, oh, yeah, extraterrestrials, if they landed their UFO in my backyard, I'd walk up and shake their hand. And I'm thinking, oh, no, you wouldn't.
Oh, I know that argument. We do something around here where I always will ask people, well, how would you react? If you haven't experienced anything, how would you react? Well, I'd get my video camera out. I would start taping things. I would start doing... No, you wouldn't. Your mind cannot comprehend what your eyes are seeing, and when you have both of those thoughts mixing in with each other right off the bat, it doesn't work too well, does it?
No, it doesn't. And they also have tricks they can employ, and they're energetic. Even though they just are words, there's an energy surrounding them. So going all the way back to when my experiences first started, and I had this trauma, and I finally blurted out gradually, if you remember this, it will kill you. That was an implant by them to never, ever look at ET, the ET phenomenon or any ET incidents that had happened with me. So my therapist also confirmed that in sessions he'd done, he'd also run into phrases like that held a power over a person. They weren't just words. There's an energetic component to it that welds you into all of this and keeps you from seeing it. So there's just a different, if you want to call it vibration or energy associated with these beings. So when you're with them, you're not like with a normal person. You're in this entirely different energy field, and they don't change their energy field to accommodate you. You're stuck in this thing, and it's an overwhelm.
Yes, indeed. It is a very overwhelming experience. We got about 30 seconds here before we have to go to break. Why don't you tell people, because we'll continue the stories in hour number 2, but tell people quickly where they can find your videos on YouTube.
Well, my videos, I actually don't have any videos. The main one is Lee Strauss's YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Which is, not of this earth. So not of this earth, but if you're going to put it on YouTube, you've got to go not of this earth, UFO Mount Adams. And he has a couple different videos in there. One more polished and one is the raw footage of a Mount Adams experience that I can probably talk about later in the show here.
Sure. All right. I'm going to get you to hold on. Tom Sanger is our guest tonight. We are talking UFOs. We're going to learn more about Roger and the Mount Adams UFO sighting and everything that goes along with that as well. We're going right into UFOs and ET Contact tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Hope you're enjoying. We'll stick around. We got hour number 2 coming up right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Lori and Fenton here, SOR listeners. Join me at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th, where 14 presenters discuss all things disclosure, UFOs, and aliens. Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address disclosure. Preston Dennett will present Inside UFOs. Your Dave Scott and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien contact. Get tickets at caufocon.com.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Laurie and Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at SpacedOutRadio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at SpacedOutRadio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Hey, this is Canadian paranormal investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Gail Nix Jackson is going to join us. Now, her grandfather filmed the elusive Nix film of JFK being assassinated in Dealey Plaza. We're going to find out about that film tomorrow night starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on the Fringe FM, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Kashnickard. Kashnickard is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can watch us live on periscope.tv. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, where we put all of our archives. We're on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. Shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read up on the Encounter online, which includes my blog as well. You can also watch great videos from Tim Doyle's UFO Seekers and Contact TV from Leslie Mitchell Clark, and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking with UFO researcher Tom Sanger, who also is an ET contactee. His story is quite incredible, where he has had personal contact with an extraterrestrial that he has nicknamed Roger. Tom, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Not a problem to have you back. Now, right beforehand, the break, you were talking about an extraterrestrial that came within 6 inches of your face. Penny on Periscope has a question for you, and she is asking, was there any odor or smell to this extraterrestrial when it was so close to your face?
That was not part of the session. I really didn't get anything like that. There could have been, but the overwhelm was having this thing in my face with these emotions and energies that are just not part of this planet. So it could very well have been, but it's not something I put my attention on, I guess you could say.
So take us back through that reaction. What was going through your mind at that time when you were having this incredibly close encounter?
In the session?
Yes.
You're talking about the regression session, yeah. Well, what was going on in a couple of things. One is this incident came out of nowhere. I didn't expect this to be the material of the session that we were going to do. Just boom, there it is, and there he is in my face. So it was overwhelming. Then the energies associated with it were, no explanation for those, because those were foreign. But the biggest thing was the emotions that there's no name for them, because it's not part of the human experience normally. So what was going through my mind was, holy crap! and the fact that it was so traumatic going through this that like I said, I couldn't even talk for a 5-minute period.
So is that all it lasted, was 5 minutes, this encounter?
No, that was 5 minutes in the session, because my therapist actually was looking at his watch. He's going, wow, only, this is going on for a good 5 minutes. That he knew that he just needed to let me just sit there and not say anything. He understood that I was going through a traumatic release. But, the sessions generally last hour and a half, something like that. So the entire incident, I have no idea how long that lasted, because what we encountered in the session was maybe only part of an incident. It had to be part of an incident, because I don't even know how I got there on a table with an ET 6 inches away from my face. We never got into that aspect of it.
So this all stems from the incident back in 1989, correct?
No, not at all.
Okay, when was this one then?
This was, I don't know. I don't know when the actual incident was.
Mm-hmm. So how many...
I just needed to have, because there's, people all the time talking about abductions and all that. I just needed to actually have that in the session as part of my actual life experience. So I could understand, have more empathy with people who had gone through this. Because I didn't understand how overwhelmingly powerful it was until I went through it in the session. Now I can have empathy for people who are, shattered by an actual abduction experience. Abduction meaning taken against your will. So we're not talking about, friendly ETs.
How many times do you think you've been taken?
I have no idea. We went back to when I was 3, and this was an experience with little tiny guys, and they're so highly advanced, yet they're so almost like childlike, and I could see their aura, a blue aura, and they are, all these different ETs have, on the positive side, have different jobs. Their job is to initiate children into the ET phenomenon, ET family, before they become indoctrinated in the school system and political system and everything else. So it gives them this clean experience that doesn't have all the other stuff having to do with the normal indoctrination into our society. But I was only 3.
Is it something, Tom, that since you don't know how many times you have been taken, that would you consider yourself a multiple abductee or / contactee then, because of what hasn't come out yet?
Yeah, I think in regression work we only hit the really salient points, the points that were really important to me, rather than, trying to find every little thing that had ever happened. But I know with other people, they go through regression work and they find out, initially they may think, oh, maybe I had an experience. Then they find out they've had experiences their whole life. So I have no idea on that, really no idea whatsoever. But I definitely have experienced the negative side of the phenomenon and the positive, and there's a sharp line between the two.
Before we get into the negative and positive, I want to get to Andrew's question here on Twitter. He is asking, when you had your regression and you remembered the ET contact, was there something significant going on in your life at that time, like marking an important anniversary event from your past or a traumatic moment, perhaps?
The problem with that is I don't know the timeline of when that incident occurred. Because what was important in the session was for me to experience the actual abduction phenomenon in its fullest sense, where you're on the table with them 6 inches from your face. I don't even know how old I was, let alone what was going on in my life. That wasn't important. What was important was to experience the trauma, the power, and these like I say, these emotions that you have no words for.
So when you were going through those emotions, what went through your mind between your first contact? Would you consider that a benevolent contact, the first one?
When you say first one?
The one that you regressed.
That one was definitely not benevolent at all. That was very similar to what David Jacobs wrote about in his books, where the ET is in your face and goes into your mind, that sort of thing. It's very, very traumatic. So that was not something I volunteered for at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a true abduction experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then other experiences I've had are absolutely positively oriented, and there's no abduction component to that. It's all voluntary, and everything's hunky-dory.
Mm-hmm.
They're much more, I guess you might say, spiritually oriented.
Let's get into you meeting Roger. Explain to our audience how you met Roger.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think there are lots and lots of people who have volunteered to, this whole thing about being on a mission, but they volunteered to do something along the lines of a mission here on this planet. I have a feeling I've worked with him, for a long, long time. Maybe even going past life type stuff, or, before even coming to this planet in my body. I don't know. But the things that I do know was in 1977, when I was doing some backpack up on the Pacific Crest Trail up there in the Cascades. I had this night where I couldn't sleep. I'm in my sleeping bag, down in my sleeping bag, and there are these bald-headed guys with these wavy bodies, and it was a very strange night. And I went out of there, and I don't read. I just don't. And I started going to the library and reading science fiction, short stories. And I decided most of them are horrendous. People can't write, So that I'll write my own story. So I wrote this story about this guy. It's funny I remember it, but J.K. Mallory, I don't know why I came up with that. And he's out fishing, and it's getting to be dusk, and there's forest behind him. He's going to go to his cabin, and he packs everything up, turns around, and there's this UFO pulsating in the trees, and these two beings come up on each side of him and escort him on board, and he's petrified. And he meets this guy on board, this little ET, and the ET, this is kind of interesting, because the ET is telling him all these advanced things, so the guy starts to relax more, like, oh, well, this is a friendly encounter, and this is interesting stuff. So the ET was telling him that diseases only have to do with vibration. And if you have a certain organ that's diseased, it's running at a different vibrational level. So they have the ability and technology to put in the correct vibration and thus heal people in their bodies. And I thought, I look back on that in 1977, right? That's a pretty cool idea. But anyway, he gets to know this being better. And he says, well, what's your name? He said, we don't have names. We just have a kind of a telepathic signature. We all know who we are. And he said, do you mind if I call you Roger? He goes, no, okay. And then when he's leaving, he says, how do I know to get in touch with you again? He said, don't worry. There's many of us already on your planet among you. So this is a story I wrote. I've never written a story before, never wrote one since. It's kind of funny. So on one of our trips up to the Pleiades, I'm living in Tucson, and we're going to go up there. And this is pre-internet, so I had to write actual letters. Remember those, with paper and writing and stamps? So I'm writing this person in California. So she's going to come out to Tucson and meet someone and drive all the way up there, right, with this other person. She comes to my place at 1 in the morning, knocks on the door. I don't even know this person other than correspondence and letter. Instead of her going, are you Tom? Hey, great. I open the door. She says, who the hell is Roger? I kid you not. From her trip all the way from California, she was just had this thing about Roger. And this was in the 90s. And here I'd written this story back in 77. So these ETs they have this dry sense of humor, the way they do these things. It's really pretty funny.
Have you ever met Roger face to face?
Yes, but not as a conscious memory. I'm going to go on a coughing fit here. So I had already explained going up to the Pleiades with Corrine, and then when I had the regression session, we found that we actually were on board with this little guy, and that was Roger. Of course, that's not his real name, but since they have this sense of humor, I call him Roger.
I
was face to face, but I don't have conscious memory. But go ahead.
How would you describe Roger to people who are trying to imagine what he is like?
It comes out of other people's session work where they have the normal kind of gray or whatever you want to call them guys running around, and then this one being will come along who's kind of more superior to the other ones. So that's kind of the way he is. And he just happens to have this ability to be a diplomat and a liaison between other ETs out there and humans. So he just has this diplomatic ability, sense of humor, deep wisdom, the whole idea. And he's able to communicate very well, obviously with telepathy, with people so they can feel relaxed. So this whole story back in 77 with J.K. Mallory and apparently I had an experience up on the Pacific Crest Trail up there, backpacking, with Roger. And then I wrote a story about it.
So, in your mind, is Roger a humanoid type extraterrestrial? Is he from Zeta Reticuli? What do you describe him
he'd be from Zeta. Yeah, he'd be from Zeta Reticuli. But if you look at human civilizations, we have people who go to work every day, and they're not that great at communication. They bumble around, and some people are better. But there are certain people who have a very, very good diplomatic skill. And they just do. They're probably going to have a wide knowledge base. They're able to work, you're going to feel comfortable with them, and in conversation, and so on. And a lot of times these people are chosen for diplomatic positions because of their ability. And they are different than other people. So that's kind of what he is. He's just, like I say, he's a liaison between other extraterrestrial groups and humans. He works as this liaison interim individual.
I want to get to a question from Andrew here. He is saying on Twitter, I have a friend who had recurring dreams about aliens coming through her ceiling, reaching in and pulling her out of her room. She has experienced these feelings and images all of her life. When I asked her how she was born, she told me by cesarean section. I then asked her how to describe how a fetus would feel, see, hear, and experience being removed from its mother's womb. She told me it would be much like her dreams that she's had all her life. Does this resonate with you at all? Not the birth per se, but some experience from childhood which could come out as alien intervention.
Well, like I say, I think everybody is a spiritual being, and I know I've worked with people, I'm an amateur therapist, at least I was. I was pretty good at it. And, past life stuff came up. I didn't ask them to look at past life stuff. But I really think that, as beings, there's a lot of us who are volunteers for this extraterrestrial. I think eventually it's going to be disclosure, and that we volunteered for these different positions we have. So I think we've made some agreements before even coming here of what we're going to do in relation to this phenomenon. I think a lot of us probably come from extraterrestrial families. So people like her would have a conflict of being human, but also going, wait a second, there's something else going on with me with this. Yeah, I can certainly relate to that.
What kind of timeline were these experiences with Roger happening, or are they still continuing to this day?
Oh, they're definitely continuing. I generally speaking, I just got to go about my life, go to work, and that sort of thing, and various things, with really nothing happening at all. But what they do, and it gets to the point a lot of times where it goes on for so long. I've had several years where nothing happens. It gets to the point where I think, oh, well, now it's over. And then all of a sudden, blam, they just, they start interacting with me again. So it's an ongoing thing. I know that they have a disclosure project, and they gave me information about this disclosure project and how they're going to do this. So it's a continuous thing, and therefore it would be something in the future having to do with this disclosure and my involvement with that.
Before we get to the whole disclosure aspect, Gail has a question here. She is asking, is it like with Roger that he's a companion, or you just dream about him and you get messages?
No, I actually consider that I am a volunteer before this lifetime to come here and do certain things to move things forward, and that I'm working with this being in conjunction with all of this. So he's not like, a pal who hangs out with me or anything like that. It'd be almost like a coworker on a project. And that everybody has their own, it's kind of funny, you can see it if you look carefully. Everybody has their own little, almost compartmentalized role in all of this. So a lot of people, they probably think, yeah, I'm not really getting very much data with this or experience with this, but they're probably getting just enough so they can fulfill their role. And then in the future, they'll probably look back and go, oh, now I understand what my job has always been with this. For example, a lot of experiencers are in the healing arts. Therapists, doctors, nurses, all kinds of people like that. I think you find the majority of people who feel like they're really connected with positive ET stuff, they're in those healing arts. And that's something I think down the line is going to be necessary for people when everything unfolds. They're going to need these people to help them through almost like a trauma of what will be happening on this planet.
Do you feel that he has sent you downloads or some sort of information packages mentally, so that way you could prepare for this entire disclosure movement and how to help people, Tom?
That's an amazing question, because that's exactly what's happened. When I was going out to that Weyerhaeuser clear cut, not knowing what the heck I was doing and having all this missing time, it's like, why do you need hours and hours and hours of missing time? And more, I guess you might say more recently, realized that they had downloaded a whole bunch of information. And what happened, the real awakening for me was in 2013. Yeah, 13, we're out at Sabino Canyon, which is in the northeast edge of Tucson, and I'm with my therapist friend. We're hiking up. We're about 1.1 miles into the canyon, and you can go up there at night. It's a paved road, and you're up in this beautiful canyon. And we look over. I won't go into the whole story, but we look over at this mountain called Blackhead's Ridge, and there's this darn UFO up there. And it's I looked Google Earth it. It's 0.4 miles away, so not very far away. With this pulsating white light, and you could see daylight below it, not daylight, but sky below it to the ridge line. So it was in the sky, had a very faint light going across to this little bitty red light on the other side. And I turned to my friend and I said, you know, my contact guys are from Zeta Reticuli. And when I said Zeta, this light made this huge burst. And when I said Reticula, it went almost all the way out. And what happened from that, we went to a restaurant, after a 24-hour restaurant after that, and we were in this super altered state. But I went for, 2 days with this incredible amount of information that was coming through. And it was only after that I realized, this is uploaded information from the download that I'd gotten so many years before in 1988 in that clear cut. So I was actually given the information of exactly how they're going to do disclosure with the average person. And then I looked at all these other things we'd been involved in, going to Mount Baker and various things, and how that all fit in. I could tell you about that if you're interested.
Yeah, go for it. Let's run with it.
Okay. Yeah, so I never understood it. You know, we go up to the Pleiades Mountain, and that's just a little hut up there. You can only get a handful of people up there. But then going up to Artist Point by the Mount Baker volcano, and you've been up there, so it's that huge parking lot up there. So there's this big parking lot that tons of people can go to. Well, when I moved to Tucson, I thought I was just going here for health reasons, right? Because I had some problems living up in the Northwest. And I didn't even know that the Sabino Canyon was like the place here, and it's got a big parking lot. So what this information that was downloaded was the ETs are going to perform these communication events with lights, and we'll be able to, work it out with them how this communication will work. So it's right there. You're not relying on somebody who says, I have telepathic messages saying that they want me to be the king of the world or something. This is right there, and you can video, you can do whatever you want, but it's a direct communication with like question, answer. But they're going to do these events out in semi-remote locations that are highly, highly aesthetic. And you know that from living where you live and looking at Mount Baker, how staggering that view is, and how, when you saw the four lights, how magnificent that is. So they're going to do these events where you'd be able to actually, without telepathy, just ask them questions, and they will be able to answer. So that way, no one can own the experience and lie about it and do all kinds of manipulations. It's right there. And they're going to do these at locations where large numbers of volunteers can go to, rather than, UFOs showing up over the city and freaking people out and everybody being paranoid. This is where people who want to have these experiences can go out to these locations. And what's funny is our trip this year in August to Mount Baker and the Artist Point parking lot is going to be during the Perseid meteor shower. And one year they had a total of, I think, 8,000 people go up there over the course of the night. And they're all looking at the sky.
I have some questions coming in for you. Gloria is asking, Tom, have you ever heard of the Mojave incident? And if so, what do you think of that story?
It's funny. I have all these experiences, but I don't really look into the subject. So no, I don't know that one.
All right, let's go over to Twitter here. And Michelle is asking, why would disclosure be that traumatic? Life doesn't change tomorrow for me if they announced ETs are real, and they are. I still have to get up and go to work.
And I will bet you probably Michelle is very young. So I think there's a whole generation of young people who would they won't even, this would be just cool to them. But for some older people and people who are, I don't know, it'd be very traumatic for them, especially people who are very religious and so on. This would be the devil and all that. And even a lot of people who would embrace it, it would be an overwhelm, and they might need some counseling and all this. So that's why I say a lot of people who are experiencers are actually in the healing arts.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I really do think this is going to happen, let's just say if it does, there will be a lot of people who will need some help along with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at when you saw those 4 UFOs over Mount Baker, how you probably felt.
Oh, I was enjoying that one. I'll tell you, the ones that kind of freaked me out a little bit were, well, there was a couple. There was the black triangle over top of my house. That one hit me. That wasn't cool. There was the UFO landing, and then 5 days after that, seeing my first extraterrestrial.
Yeah, that's kind of... Yeah, that's kind of abrupt, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, you have to realize that I'm just an average Joe. And if people were to inhabit my mind, I just kind of go through my day, what I'm thinking is pretty boring stuff. So when this thing happened at Sabino Canyon and I had this download of information, it was phenomenal. I mean, it was energetic. It was all this information. I don't think like that. So the plan that they have is brilliant, to be, half mile away doing these light displays with communications with people, volunteers in these semi-remote locations. I'm not smart enough to come up with an idea that's brilliant. Because what it does is it makes it a very safe thing for the initial people who go out there, who of course are going to go back and tell their buddies, oh man, you got to come out and experience this. So you get more and more of these volunteers, and it could happen all over the world. You get more and more of these volunteers who are able to go back and say, hey, don't be afraid of this. This is the coolest thing ever. So it'll be this gradual deal where it's not traumatic for the volunteers who go out there, but maybe traumatic for other people. I have a feeling the ETs are going to crack some jokes too. I just have that feeling, because people don't expect that. People think, oh, ETs are these solemn, little dudes. That's what's all in all the movies, I have a feeling they're going to have some jokes.
Mm-hmm. Andrew has a question on Twitter, and he is saying, how does one distinguish between people who have experienced sexual abuse in childhood but have somehow buried that memory underneath a false memory of an upsetting alien contact, and people who have had actual ET contact, in your opinion?
It's very, very simple. If you go through therapy, and I'll give you an example. Because like I say, I'm an amateur. My therapist friend said, actually, I'm pretty good at what I do as far as regression work, right? So I'll give you an example. So I sat down with this woman. She really wanted to find out about her ET stuff. So she was raised on a Native American reservation. She's in this big old tub thing for cows to drink out of, and she's not supposed to be there. She's being naughty at age 7, right? And she sees the cows and all this. And then she says, in the session, she says, well, I don't like that cow. And I said, well, take a look at the cow. Yeah. I said, how far away is it from you? See, I don't lead the witness. And she gave me a distance. And then she said, that's not a cow. And it was these 3 ETs that were coming over to her, and she was paralyzed. She was taken on board, and they did this little injection up her nose with an implant between her eyes, et cetera, et cetera. It was very, actually in the session, it was very, I was watching her. She had her eyes closed, but she was squirming in the chair and all that. And we went through, here's the key. We went through the incident over and over and over several times until she felt better about it. The thing is, she had a screen memory initially of a cow. That was removed by us looking at it. Now she had ETs. We went through the incident over and over and over, and it was still ETs. So that just kind of does it to me. If you have a screen memory or some other kind of memory that goes away and then there's something else and it stays that way, then that is your real experience. Especially if it has, she's squirming in the chair. And
we lost Tom there. We're going to have to call him back. Give me a second here as we got to ring Tom back into the show. Somehow, his phone just died.
Hello.
Hey, I almost had to get my tinfoil hat on. Almost.
Whoa. Now, wait a second. Did you do something on your end?
No, you clicked off on us, my friend.
I didn't hit a darn thing.
Oh, them aliens. It's them aliens. You got to be careful.
That is, I'm just holding the phone in my hand.
It wasn't a cheek or anything like that. Maybe a nostril accidentally hit it or anything like that.
There are no nostrils present anywhere near the phone here. They're located going out in a different direction.
What about beard hair? Beard hair always does it.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. I have a flip phone, so you have to really punch a button to do something on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting.
Yeah, it happens. It happens
nice
every now and again.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to Joe's question here.
Yeah.
Joe is asking, Tom, how do you reconcile your happy alien memories with all the people that have reported horrible, torturous alien contact?
I don't know how you reconcile, because I've had I've gone through negative experiences in regression, like I've already told you. And there's no doubt that's negative. You're being held against your will, and there's all this trauma and all that. This positive stuff, and other people have experienced it as well. You just know. There's nothing negative happening to you. Matter of fact, when we go to Baker, I always kind of look at it as it's like this magical window opens, and you go up in there, and all these things happen that are just phenomenal. All these synchronicities over the years have been absolutely amazing. So everybody's gone on those trips. No one's thinking of anything negative or traumatizing about it. It's all wonderful. and then they're providing these wonderful experiences. So I know some people might think, well, you're being deceived. But, you know, on that deeper level of knowing, there's zero chance of that, just none.
I, too, have had positive and negative contact. And you'll understand this, Tom, when I ask you this question. You can tell the you can tell the difference between the positive and negative contact by the energy the aliens give off, can you not?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And my friend Corrine, back in 1989, we went up to the Pleiades. She's kind of a suburbanite. Her kids were grown up and gone, and she decided just, I'm going to join this hiking club, and she's the type of person that everybody comes to with their problems because she's a problem solver, and her artwork she does is almost like Quaker artwork. It's simplistic. It's just beautiful. She'll do a painting of these two geese or something, and that's just the way Corrine is. She's just so straightforward and honest, So when she had these experiences, there's absolutely nothing negative about them. And like she said, it opened up the entire universe to her. And actually recently she said from that day forward, it completely transformed her life because she really wasn't doing all that great before all this happened. She was kind of living the life most people have with a lot of, stuff going on that's just not the best. So this just blew her out into the greater universe. So there's no delusion about that, and no, it's not like she's going to at some point go, oh, this has all been a horrible deception, and I'm being used by these evil aliens. Not a chance,
Well, I mean, I look at the whole negative aspect as someone who has both. I think most people who have had bad contact are people who have also had some sort of positive at some point as well. Whether or not they recognize it, I'm not too sure. But yeah. I think it's something that, does need to be addressed, that if you've had one sort of contact, you're definitely going to get the other one as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I can't say that broadly, but I know for me, I had to experience the negative, but my philosophy became experience the negative, understand it, but don't dwell on it. And then, go and try to embrace the positive. And I think too many people just almost wallow in the negative with just abductions, little gray guys, abductions. And it's like, come on. Put yourself out there, go out the mountains by yourself and go, here I am.
Why not? Just open yourself up. Make it a Zen moment.
Make it a Zen moment. But we really dug into the negative side in regression. We found out that there's lineages, and it's really like here, you've got poor old Adolf Hitler. He gets cast as the worst guy in history, and he probably was, So you got the Adolf Hitler, and then you've got, I don't know, Mother Teresa on the other side or something like that. So you have these people who have different intentions and everything else with what they want to do with people. And same thing out there, So you got this almost like two lineages that tend to work on this planet. So we went into the negative lineages, and it goes right up through actual people on this planet who are on the higher levels of government and all that, and they're linked in with this negative lineage of ETs, going up through the grays, and then going up into this very nebulous area we've never really understood. But doggone, it appears to be some sort of reptilian group, and then even goes up higher to beings who don't even have bodies. They're just spiritual entities. But that whole negative side tends to work with mind control all the way down. And we started calling what they do frequency control, because what they do is they knock you down more and more and more in your spiritual frequency and weld you into your body where you think you are your body and that you're not a spiritual being. And people walk around in a state of hypnosis on this planet for the most part, not understanding that they're being controlled. So that's what we found out on this negative lineage. And this positive lineage, it does appear that they're going to be doing this disclosure and freeing us from what we call frequency control, helping free us from that.
We only got about 4 minutes here before we have to go to our second and final break of the night. I want to get to another question here from Angel, who is asking if you know whether or not you were implanted.
Oh, that's a good one. No, I have no idea on that.
Do you think you are? No. If Roger can page you at any time when your beeper goes off.
Oh, yeah, but they work with telepathy, so they can page you anytime they want, as long as you have your little antenna out, ready to receive, and are willing to receive. But implanted, yeah, I don't know. I might have some little chip in there somewhere, which would be kind of interesting, I guess. But no knowledge of that, and coming out of the regression sessions, nothing having to do with that. But that one woman I did the session with, they put a little doodad up there between her eyes. And what's interesting about her is she has epilepsy, which is really kind of very interesting.
All right, let's get to another question here, and this one comes from Kevin, who is asking, maybe I missed out, but Tom, have your recollections of your contacts only been from hypnosis? Do you have any conscious memories that do not have to be drawn out while you're under?
Only, I can't describe it. I've had hits, you might say. So I guess because I guess we have a break, but I do have a story about Mount Hood that would take a little time, and that would have this concept of getting a energetic hit. But other than that, I'm not seeing actual physical beings or anything like that.
Would you want it to go to that extent?
Yeah, it's funny, but after all these years, I think I'd be a little bit. I think I'd be a little shaken and scared to actually see, real conscious memory ET right there. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally understand with where you're going with that, because, it is intimidating. It is a little bit of a freak out, because the good part about it is when you're taken at night, you can write it off as a bad dream, if you know what I'm saying. You can write it off as a bad dream.
Absolutely.
But when it happens with, those scenarios where you're actually wide awake and it's happening right in front of you, that's a whole different ballgame right there.
Yeah, very, very good point. And that also falls in with regression. You go through a regression session, and at the end of it, you go, holy mackerel, wow, that was something. But you're also, a little part of you is going, well, was that real? So you can do that. But if you have the little guy right there and you're looking at him just like you're looking at some normal human in a store or something, I guess that would be a whole different thing, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean,
they probably know I'm not ready for that yet.
Or maybe you are. You just don't know.
Ooh, maybe I am and I don't know it. I like that.
Well, time will tell if you've got this much contact so far, though.
Yeah, I think down the line it's going to happen, and it'll happen for everybody, and then we'll just adjust, and then 100 years from now, it'll just be, hey, of course, extraterrestrials, no big deal, or 50 years, something like that. But at first, it's going to be a shocker.
I agree, and we'll get more into the whole disclosure aspect in hour number 3 as we are getting ready to step out for our final break of the night here on Spaced Out Radio. Our guest tonight is Tom Sanger. He is a UFO experiencer, ET experiencer from Tucson, Arizona via Washington State in the Pacific Northwest, battling a little bit of a cold tonight, so that's why his throat is sounding a little bit rusty, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to go the next 45 minutes with Tom after the break. Then we're going to get into today's Thought of the Dave. And then afterwards, I think I'm going to head on and stay on periscope.tv/Spaced Out Radio, where I'm going to take your questions, hang out with you guys. So I'd love you to join me there as well. We're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back with the third and final hour right after this.
Hello, SOR listeners. Lorian Fenton here. Let me ask you, now that disclosure's happened, what does it mean for ufology? For answers, join us at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th. Keynote speakers Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address the current disclosure agenda. Dave Scott, yes, you're Dave Scott, and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien encounters. Get your tickets at caufocon.com. That's caufocon.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We are lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET Contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries, so tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET Contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we are going to step back into the controversy of the JFK assassination. Gail Nix Jackson is going to join us, and we're going to talk about the famed Nix video, or movie, film, whatever you want to call it, that her grandfather filmed on the day of JFK's assassination. Not as popular as the Zapruder film. This one was kind of kept private, shall we say. But we're going to find out about it tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on the Fringe FM, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Kashnickered is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. If you want to connect live with me during the show as well, give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. We are live on Periscope.tv. We are also on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio, so you go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for our archives. We're on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to some Bumblefoot, shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or you can also join us for great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we introduce UFO and ET experiencer Tom Sanger, who does a lot of UFO and ET work, both in Washington State and in Tucson, Arizona, where he is home now. He's a contactee with a being that he calls Roger. Tom, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
I want to ask you and take this in the direction of our disclosure movement that seems to be happening right now. Some people call it confirmation. Others are calling it full-on disclosure. Some are saying it's a soft disclosure, and that's kind of where I'm leading to right now. Before we get into what you learned about disclosure from your extraterrestrial contact, what do you think about the entire movement that's going on right now?
You know, it's kind of funny. I actually don't follow hardly any of this stuff. Here's something that's really odd, though, is for some reason I went on to, what is it, Paradigm Research Group?
Stephen Bassett's group, yes.
Stephen Bassett's site. And because I just happened to watch a little bit of him on a YouTube video, which I don't normally do. So I go on his site, and I'm looking and going, oh, this really looks like something. And I knew he's like a primary person working for disclosure, right? So I see on the site it says contact. And usually a group like that is going to have a phone number. There's a phone number. I call the phone number, and now I'm talking with Stephen Bassett. Unbelievable. And I told him my version of what I think how the ETs are going to disclose to the average person. And what's really interesting, he says all the data he's getting now, after he's been working with this for, I don't know, decades, or at least a couple decades, he said he's pretty much absolutely convinced this is the year. This is the year they're going to do it. And I think he's talking more about government, but then it would tie in with what I'm talking about also. So it could be like a two-pronged thing of government disclosure and then also disclosure to the average person. But what a weird, I mean, this guy's all over the world and writing, and for me to call his number and talk with him, I couldn't believe it.
Well, the one thing with Stephen, though, is the unfortunate part for him is he has been saying for about the last 17 years, this is the year. This just happens to be the closest that we have gotten because of what has come out through the New York Times article and Luis Elizondo, who used to run the program. You know, I mean, if you talk to Grant Cameron, Grant will tell you that he doesn't look at this as disclosure at all. He sees it more as a confirmation that UFOs are visiting here because they aren't, in the entire view of things, aren't letting loose whether or not these UFOs, UAPs, AATIPs, whatever you want to call them, are actually from alien descent. They're not sure if they're their own, some sort of black project that is unknown, or if they're from Russia, Great Britain, China, India, North Korea, wherever it may be. So I think they're playing too safe a game right now in order to try and warm the public up to it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a real division with things having to do with the government and how kind of rigid that is, and disinformation being so much a part of that, and so on. And then, my side and a lot of other people who are kind of like me don't want to really have anything to do with that. We're looking for the actual experience with the positively oriented ETs to advance this with the public. And years ago, it's funny because years ago, and this kept on coming up too, was I just got this term of planetary activation, and I didn't know what that meant, but it was kind of like the idea of a light switch being turned on to be this activation. So now I can understand that more with the concept of disclosure would be like an activation planetary-wise. And if the ETs really do these communication events, it will completely bypass government. There's nothing they can do about it. If they want to manipulate, control, do disinformation, do some kind of weird false flag, holographic events, they're not going to be able to do that sort of stuff. They could give it a shot, but it will have no longevity because they're dealing with being so advanced that it's just absolutely ridiculous.
I want to get to Andrew's question here on Twitter. He is asking, the great sci-fi writer Arthur C. Clarke wrote a novel called Childhood's End about contact with a superior alien race who assert themselves as Earth's overlord, whereupon they end the human problems, including war, poverty, etc. Clarke's big questions was, when a superior power does this, it could cause humanity to lose any motivation to keep achieving, and therefore the human spirit is killed. Is it, in fact, in your opinion, a good idea for aliens to step in and try and fix our problems? Should we not do it ourselves and learn?
I think we're almost like we're in a daycare or something with a fence around us, and you have the adults, so it's funny because I had, again, similar to that planetary activation, this thing about they won't do anything to harm the children. And I always thought in terms of, kids, So if they're going to do some events and so on, they're not going to do anything that's frightening. So my therapist friend all of a sudden said one time, he said, Tom, when they say not harm the children, they're talking about all of humanity. And I went, oh my God. So I look at it similar to a daycare. If you have, or classroom, if you have a teacher who's showing the kids how to do everything and just got their hand in everything, or parents that are doing that, the kid's going to be apathetic. They're not going to be able to bring out anything of their own. So I think that's the same way with this, and I think a lot of people also are a little frustrated with how long this is taking. They want the ETs to actually do something, do more with this, where it's really up to us to evolve more up to that point where we can interact with them more on a somewhat more even level rather than a dependency type of level. And if you look at the advances in science and so on, I mean, look at where we're at. My gosh, I think the ETs would be able to have some pretty interesting conversations with scientists at this point and really not be too far over their heads, where if they tried to do disclosure in 1854, that might not go over too well, right?
Do you think the religious aspect will kick in with a lot of people if the aliens were to come down and take disclosure into their own hands?
Yeah, that's why I was saying I think the information the ETs gave me is correct. That they're going to do these events in places where it's highly aesthetic, just like when you saw the UFOs over Mount Baker. That was just a magnificent thing, I'm sure, for you, you know. But they're going to do it in these relatively remote locations where only volunteers can go out there. So if they did it over cities, you'd have all these people out there with their crosses going, "I cast you out," you know, this sort of thing. So it has to be this gradual thing. There'd be some shock value to it, but it would have to be this gradual thing where more and more and more and more people get involved and can tell other people that, hey, you know, this is actually pretty cool. You know, it may not even really conflict with your religious beliefs, because, you know, the ETs are probably going to have the same concept that there's a intelligent mind, or, you know, out there creating all this, intelligent creators. So it won't necessarily conflict. To some degree it was, but people could evolve into that.
So what did they tell you then about disclosure? Fill us in on that.
Yeah, well, what I got, the primary thing, like I said, was they have to have a plan that isn't just a big shock. So the idea is to have these events with lights. So the lights, you'd be able to actually ask questions out loud to them while they're out there in the sky, and they'd be able to use the lights to answer those questions. There'd be some kind of protocol set up with how they do this. And that way, you know, I mean, otherwise you're going to have all these people who channel and all this. I don't know if channeling is real or not with some people, but with a lot of people it certainly is not. So if there's only telepathy, then people could say, "Oh, I've got the inside information, they just told me." Well, this way they can't do that. Also, governments would not be able to manipulate and do, you know, disinformation if these guys are sitting out there communicating directly with you. So I think it's a brilliant, absolutely brilliant plan, and that's why I say it could not be something I made up because I'm not that smart.
Are they planning on forcing the government's here hands on disclosure? Is that what you're trying to get at?
I think they're going to bypass government entirely and not even worry about them, because these events would be pretty darn magnificent for people, and people will just not have any darn interest in all these manipulations these governments do. And look what's happening now with all this stuff going on with the memo and you know, all that kind of stuff, and then false flags, and I'm sure you're aware of that. And you don't know what's real and what's not when they're putting out this information. Well, the ETs would just go, just ignore all that. We're going to talk directly to you. Governments can do whatever they want. They can go fly F-16s at us, and they won't be able to shoot us out of the sky. And then people will get real information.
Yeah, but how do you know that the government isn't going to try and stop that from happening? I mean, there's a lot of what-ifs with any extraterrestrial coming down here.
Yeah, because I think we get very centered in this country about, you know, the U.S. being the leader. I mean, we're obviously a great country, you know, but we're not the only one on the planet. So other countries like Chile, you know, their government, if you're a pilot and you have a UFO experience, you have to tell that experience to the government. Then that is all diagnosed for a while, and then it's released to the public through this agency. So that country's wide open to this. So if these events happen around the world, it bypasses any single government, trying to cover up this stuff. Now, if they think they can go bomb Artist Point up at Mount Baker to get rid of all these volunteers who want to have these these experiences, I don't think that's going to go over too well. So I think they're going to be stuck. But I think the ETs are just, I don't think they're going to put that much attention on, if you want to ask them who shot JFK, I don't think they're going to give you an answer on that one. They're going to go to other things. I think especially with scientists is going to be a real important communication for them. And their jokes. I can't wait for their jokes also, but go ahead.
Where do you think they land in order to make this supposed contact? Is it going to be a major city? Because everybody in the world seems to think that in order for full disclosure to happen, it has to happen in the United States. Are we being naive on that? Could it happen anywhere?
I think we're being very naive about that. A friend of mine, we've been buddies for years. We play golf. We have this friend who's American citizen, but relatives in Mexico. And my friend is going, yeah, ET stuff, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, go do that if you want, but I'm not interested. So he talks to this friend of his, and his friend says, oh, yeah, when I visit my family, we just take a little walk, picnic walk, up to this hill at night, and we just watch the UFOs flying around. So in certain other countries, it's much more common than it is here. There's just so much... it used to be, look, back in the 50s, some people, they bring this subject up and they end up losing their job or they get thrown in an insane asylum or whatever. And now it's much more open, but I think other countries it's even more open. So if they do this on a wide scale, I think it would be such an overwhelm for any single government or group of governments to do a darn thing about it. They won't be able to do anything.
So where do you think it happens?
I think they're going to do, you would ask about cities and stuff. No, they're not going to do this over cities because that would just freak people out. So they're going to do this at, like I say, highly aesthetic, semi-remote locations where volunteers can go, where nobody's going to be freaking out because they're all volunteers and they can't wait to be part of this experience. It'll be kind of a gradual thing.
That sounds very utopic, and I understand with where you're going with that. However, I don't think for a second, Tom, that if any alien lands and they have gone close encounters of the third kind where they have, paged a few people to come on through, I don't see them getting around any sort of military on this planet. And I'm not saying that the military is going to come and bomb them or anything, but I see them being surrounded by helicopters, jet fighters in the air, soldiers on the ground, waiting for that moment for them to screw up so they could start shooting. That's just the way human nature is. We'd love to shoot things. We'd love to defend ourselves. And I see that being a real big problem. Now, I'll tell you one scenario. Go ahead. No, please.
I was going to say, that's why they're not going to land. They're going to be at a distance, just like you experienced over Mount Baker, except they'll make it a communication event. So, the government's, there is no, what I found with the ETs, they're so advanced, they don't do screw-ups. They know exactly what they're doing with all of this. So there'll be no screw-ups. They know what they're doing, and they're going to do it gradually. They're not going to do something like land and have the day the earth stood still, have the guy come out and get shot, something like that. But hey, if they want to scramble F-16s, they're not going to be able to do anything with these guys. They're too advanced for that.
No, and I understand they're way more advanced. I'll tell you the scenario that I see happening in regards to this is I see this being a I don't want to say a religious moment, but I think the extraterrestrials come down and they reach out to the Pope. As much as I'm not Catholic, and I realize that, only 1/6 of the world is.
One of the main bishops wrote that the treatise or whatever, saying that they don't see that extraterrestrials would be considered devils or anything like that, because the Bible talks about angels and all this, so they figure, sure, there could be other beings out there. This is one of the top, bishops in the church, kind of like right under the Pope. So he was actually, speaking for the church when he said that he was opening the door. Who was it? The Pope said, the Pope said they wouldn't even have to be baptized because they didn't have original sin from being on this planet. Wow, that's from the Pope himself, right? So, it's one of those things that will take, like I say, if they do this 50 years from now, it'll just be, hey, I've got an iPhone, But in 1850, if you were to present something with a working iPhone, which, you couldn't actually do, but if you could, it would be this miracle, weird stuff. But now we go, I don't like this iPhone. You throw it out and you get a new one. So 50 years from now, if they just do this disclosure 50 years from now, it'll just be, hey, yeah, of course. But there's always that, transitional period that's kind of rough and rocky and all that kind of stuff that would have to happen. And that's why I think they're going to do this in a very slow. They're not just going to all of a sudden show up in the sky and do these big events. I think they're going to do just these little minor things, kind of tweaking things along.
Andrew is
That's
asking.
kind of what I got from it anyway.
Andrew is asking in Twitter, he says, Tom, your version of disclosure sounds much like Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where normal people receive the call and gather at Devil's Tower in Wyoming to meet ET. Is this kind of what you're striving for, or you have been told will happen?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I tell people, I say, Close Encounters was the best ET documentary ever made. There was just so much reality in that movie. And then movies after that were just about, evil lizards or something. So I think that was an influenced movie, and I think it was probably pretty accurate that they're not going to be... How can they possibly go through government?
I think they pretty much have to. I think they're smart enough, and I think they're already in contact with any government out there, and I think...
But as far as, what I'm getting at is the governments will, like I say, disinformation, tweak things, manipulate things, and all that. That's why the concept of direct contact with the average person makes the most sense. So certainly what he's talking about with Close Encounters, I think that movie was highly influenced. I really do. I don't think it was just a script off of the top of somebody's head.
I would agree with you on that. That I would agree with you. It was just too perfectly set up. But on the flip side, there's some extremely imaginative people out there who could really portray the way they think it would happen. I mean, if you want to take it one step further, it's the private conversation between Ronald Reagan and Steven Spielberg after E.T. in the White House, where Reagan apparently makes a joke where everyone laughs even though he wasn't joking, basically saying, we know how real some of this is, to Steven Spielberg. You go online and read that from many different quotes from many different media sources, that Spielberg has said that in public. So, it's out there. They know it's happening. They know it's happening. They've known since 47 with Roswell.
I think you're dealing with, I mean, some of the things they've done have been so ridiculously outrageous, with synchronicities and various things. I look at it and go, okay, wow, I really do get it. You guys are just way more advanced than I am. So, I'm just not gonna push things. I'll let you guys kind of, run the show, and I'll contribute what I do. And that doesn't mean I'm being a slug with all of this. But I think they know exactly how to do all this stuff. And there's a chance they've done this stuff before on other planets with other civilizations. I don't know. But they're not going to do anything stupid or bungle or, look back and go, whoop, made a mistake on that one. I think it's going to be gradual. They're not going to do anything abrupt. But, all of this still, for me, is I don't really know. It's just the way everything has fallen together for me that this is kind of where I'm at with it, and I may be wrong.
I still think they will go through some sort of government intervention. I really do believe that, and I believe that's why the government has such huge control over what is happening, even with this soft disclosure that is happening the last almost 2 months now. I think there isn't a reason for them. I think there's too many secrets out there that would have to come out and have to be made public if ET landed on the ground. That's why I do believe, one way or another, there is some sort of deal. The question is, who is that deal with? Is it with multiple groups, or is it with one singular group? And I think that's the big issue that anybody is having right now. Or you could be like Joe Monk, who says aliens will announce their presence on Twitter.
Well, I think it's probably very complex. It would surprise me. People are certainly brought up in this country with the idea of it's either this or it's either that. You're either a Democrat or a Republican, And I think it could be, they could do both things. They could work through the government, and then they could also do a scenario like I'm describing or similar to what I'm describing with the average person. They can do both. The thing is, if they do disclosure with the average person, that's going to really pressure the government to come clean. You don't want to be that guy in the government who's been the disinformation guy and ruining people's lives if you know darn well you're going to be exposed. So you might want to, jump on the bandwagon at that point and pretend to be the good guy. I don't know. But I could easily see it being run through both ways, through the government and through average person communication events. And it wouldn't only be with our government, because there's all these governments all over the world. Like I say, in Chile, it would be entirely different than here.
Let's get to a question from Joseph here in the chat room. He is asking, Roger, have you been has Roger told you anything, Tom, about the content of the communication of the disclosure?
No, I think it's going to be, I think they're going to nix a lot of things if people are, like I say, who shot JFK? They're just going to say, well, that's not information we're going to give you. We want to, have communications with you. So I think initially it's just going to be, just your average little banter with no great revelations. But again, I think one of the big points is them getting in contact with folks in science and astronomy and that sort of thing. I think that's going to be a really big thing, because people respect that an awful lot, the idea of science and technology and that sort of thing. So if they can share information with those people, that's going to be mind-boggling for an awful lot of people. But other than that, I have no idea. The whole thing is vague, other than I think they really did tell me they're going to do communication events. Other than that, I don't know.
Daryl wants to know in the chat room what you believe or what you've been told about their agenda when or if they do this.
I think you have, like I say, these two lineages of negative elements who use mind control and disinformation and everything. And I think they're going to be gradually kind of removed from this planet. And we're going to have this whole lineage of all these different ET groups that are going to be having more influence on our planet in positive ways. And I think that's the overall agenda, is that. But as far as details of it, I have no idea how they're going to do it. Anytime I think I know what they're going to do, as far as details, I'm always wrong.
Are you in the column of saying that it's going to happen this year, or are you in the column saying that we got a lot to go through in the next few years with disclosure on UFOs, let alone aliens right now?
Yeah, well, my experiences started in 1988, and it was kind of gangbusters the way it started. And I actually thought, wow, things are going to be right around the corner. And now look what year it is and how old I am. So, this prediction thing, I don't even like doing it. But our experience last year at Mount Adams, where again, anybody listening can go to YouTube and look up the handle of Not of This Earth, or actually put into YouTube search Not of This Earth Mount Adams UFO. That was our UFO experience at Mount Adams, and we were not with the ESETI group at all. We were at a different location. But that was a big UFO, the size of the International Space Station, which is as big as a football field, with two companion UFOs. It has been run through Peter Davenport, and he said, yep, that's an ET event right there. So that, to me, that event after all these years was confirmation that they're really going to be doing something. Now, whether they're going to do it this year, I don't know. It may be some little small step beyond that this year. It may happen in other countries that these events start to happen. People get a hint, and then it just grows and grows over the course of years. I have no idea.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see as we move forward. I still believe that there is an agenda. I think more people are having sightings than ever before. As much as we look down on our cell phones so much more, there are people who are becoming more spiritually connected and taking the time to look up at places and take tours of places like the ESETI Ranch, or just in their own areas looking up in the skies. It does happen, and it is something that is comfortable for a lot of people to do, and they are becoming more open-minded to it. However, I still believe that it does need to have some sort of correlation with the entire aspect that the government, one way or another, will get involved. I don't think they can stop that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, like I say, it will probably happen with the government and also with the average person. But if you get a groundswell around the world of people having these gradual, more and more contact experiences, governments can't stop that unless they want to nuke everybody. But according to a lot of testimony, the ETs have shut down nuclear missile silos all over the place. So maybe that's never going to happen.
Well, I mean, we're going to wait and see. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
I mean, at Mount Adams, where you were, I mean, that was the start of the whole flying saucer craze in 1947 with Kenneth Arnold. And then you have, you have everything that happens at James Gilliland's ranch down there. There's a lot of things happening. A lot of things happening.
Yeah, there's more and more. And what's really funny is when I talk to people, I just get into, I don't tell them my experience, but I just ask them what they think of UFOs and all that. Almost all of it's so funny. They go, "Oh, I love ancient aliens." So that odd show that is kind of, I don't know. But anyway, that show seems to have really kicked a lot of people into having interest in the subject. It's kind of funny. But most people I've talked to are you'd be surprised if you went, but I go around at work and I talk to people, they're just charged about this subject. They want it to happen. They want to have experiences. It's amazing. It's not the 1950s anymore. You don't go to the insane asylum if you talk about it.
Well, there's still a lot of people pushing kids today on drugs about that. I know that for a fact.
Terrible. Yeah, I know.
I know with my daughter, who has literally been seeing dead people for, since she was a year and a half, 2 years old. I made the mistake of when she was going through some depression stages, and I was talking to her counselor one day, and I accidentally mentioned to the counselor if she ever mentioned about talking to dead people, and the counselor took a long pause, very quiet on the phone, heard her take a deep breath and say, "Well, we should look at getting her on medication for that." And I said, "No, you're not going to be doing that." I said, "That's your answer to everything." I said, "Maybe you need to go back to school and learn that, there are people having these experiences a little bit more than you putting a bunch of pills in my daughter, So I said a few more expletives than that, but...
Yeah, there were expletives, I'm sure. Well, my daughter was born, get this, 11/11/77, and I know we don't have much time left, so it's a long story, but it all culminated when she was, how old was she? 14. But anyway, weird things happened, and then she sat down for 2 hours, told me everything I needed to know about the ETs, hybrid program, all that. She drew out pictures, da-da-da-da-da. And I separated from her mother, so she went back to her mother in California. I wrote her a letter. I went, "Wow, that was really something, everything you told me." She said, "I don't remember telling you anything." So there you go. There's so many young people, and, she's not that young anymore. But this newer generation there's so many of them who are fearless and have all these incredible abilities that are just, where did that come from? And I think they're just wide open. They don't have those barriers that some of the older people have. And I think they just, they'll just communicate with ETs because, they were hanging out with them right before they were born anyway. That sort of thing.
We only got about 90 seconds left with you tonight.
Okay.
Where do you see your research and information going from here?
I just keep my little antenna out there, and when I get some, you might say some messages, I just follow that. But in August, we're going to Lost Lake. People can look at Lost Lake, and they can look at the image of Mount Hood beyond the lake. From there, we're going to do our UFO night watches with our color night watch cameras right from that location, looking at that mountain. So that's where we're headed. And then from there, we're going up to Mount Baker after that. So we're going to see if we have one heck of a year in August, or if this is something that's going to take several years more.
Well, good luck with that, and, definitely being involved with Michael W. Hall's UFO I-Team. They're starting to do some very good work up here in Washington State. So anytime you get to help them out, it's going to be a good time.
Oh, absolutely. You bet.
All right, Tom Sanger, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Very much appreciate you taking the time for our audience.
Well, thank you for having me on. It was great.
Thought of the Dave coming up right now. Thought of the Dave happens at every time at this night. Every night at this time. Let's try the English and not dyslexic version of that sentence. The Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where every day I put on my Facebook a question of the day, and then I get you, the valued listener, to respond to it. Sometimes we get a lot of responses, sometimes we get a few. Today is one of those few, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to get them out there, because today's Thought of the Dave literally comes down to a very simple question. Have you ever had ET contact? Tell me about it. Which species? Was it good or bad for experiences? Now, with the amount of people on social media who brag about ET contact, I'm surprised that we only got 3 people responding. Now, Adam, who has an addiction to gnomes, put a picture of a gnome on there. Looks like the singer from ZZ Top, to be honest. I don't know really what that means with ET contact, ad gnome. But putting a picture of a gnome on something like this really isn't conducive to alien talk. Alien talk, man, not gnome talk. Nothing to do with gnome talk. Could tell you that. But he has an addiction, and, we wish him well with that. We really wish him well. I have to say that. We wish him well. All right, let's get to Brian here. Brian says, not sure if this is truly alien contact, but this is the story. So, we were conducting a CE5 about just prior to last summer. The people that were present seemed to use an audio prompting tool from Dr. Stephen Greer. Not a fan of that, so I did my own focusing for the event, getting in a state by using a binaural program, which lets me to get tuned in for an RV session and connecting with potential extraterrestrials. A few minutes of blocking out the din, I was in the right state of mind and focus. I proceeded to request that extraterrestrials make their presence known and their location known. In a short period of time, I was transported to what seems to be inside the ship. While in the ship, I proceeded to look around. I noticed I was on the lower end of what seemed to be an operation center. Everyone was staring at this large pane of glass which overlooked the planet Earth. I looked to my right and up. There seems to be a Nordic-type creature in a white garment. I didn't get much detail other than the blonde hair and pale skin. I turned my attention to a portal window. I was able to see the Earth from way up above in space. While peering out of the window, I can see several other ships that were close by. Later on, I was able to immediately transport from one ship to another. How this is done is for another time. I caught my reflection in the glass. I was literally an alien gray. I got closer to the glass to get more detail of what I was. No mistake, I was a gray. Big eyes and all. I had this crazy smile on my face. I started to move my facial muscles and could see them rippling on the creature's face that I was. I could even see pores in the skin, and I started to actually touch my face. Mind you, my hands were made up of 3 digits and what I call a thumb. This was absolutely fascinating. Then began to use mental thought to let extraterrestrials know that we were waiting to meet with them and have some sort of interaction, so we need to know what location to focus on. The ship began to move, and as we traveled closer to Earth, I saw they were more in the New York City area, specifically by the George Washington Bridge. The location was direct south from where we were in Hastings, New York, on the Hudson River. The ship stopped there and hovered. It was at this point that I went to the members of the group and told them they should be focusing down south by the bridge area. I happened to have a green laser with me. I started circling the area that I should be focusing on and where the ship should be. Several other members of the group took notice and focused on the George Washington Bridge area. As I used the laser to circle the area of focus for a quick burst of bright light took place, I again used a mental connection to the craft and its members along with the group and asked them to do the burst again. Once again, the burst took place. Still connected to the craft, I noticed that it was going to move closer to our group, literally signaling every location where they would get a burst. And like clockwork, when I pointed to the area, the burst took place. In a matter of a minute, this craft traveled roughly 25 miles to our location before rising higher in the air. I am thankful when all this took place, there were several other people, independent, that witnessed what I was saying took place. That's an incredible story, man. True or not, I think you can connect that way. I really do. Now, I realize there are going to be people out there saying, well, that's one hell of an imagination. That's one hell of a way to look at things. That's a good story. Very good story. Where's the proof? Well, he had witnesses. He had witnesses. Brian, I'm buying your story because I've done it myself. Robert Bingham in California is also someone who does that. Robert can go out in the sky, daytime or night, and bring in UFOs, bring in people who are all around him as his witnesses, and he says by having a clear heart and soul, making it pure, doing some meditation, he can get in there, contact whoever needs to be contacted, and he can project UFOs to come on down and say hello. Some of the videos they have got, sure, if you look at some of them, they actually look like a bunch of those silver shiny balloons that you can go to the dollar store and buy, that are all tied together in weird shapes. That does happen. But I still think it can be done. I had a few witnesses one time at the farm where a lot of my experiences happen. I had witnesses come outside and watch me do it, and we saw 3 craft that night. As Mike Morin from Haunted Crew of Canada walks into SOR headquarters studio here, grabs a Pepsi out of my fridge. He looks happy about that. All right, let's get to Sandra. Sandra says, the one I saw, I thought was a guy that I knew called Tom. However, it wasn't Tom. I ended up looking into the black eyes. I saw the real Tom the very next day, and he had bugs crawling around his Sherpa collar. I don't know which freaked me out more. Weird. Grotesque. Anything that includes bugs is just grotesque. I don't know why. I just don't like bugs. Except there is this one black bug up here. I don't know what the hell it is. It's probably like 2 inches, 2.5 inches long, and it's probably got 1 to 1.5 inches long antennae. It's got 2 of them. You know, the beauty of living up north here, I do have to say this. I'm going to get to a fishing point here for a second. You know when you go into a fishing store and you buy all those little weird-looking flies to go fly fishing? I used to do that when I lived in the Lower Mainland. I'd go in there and be like, really? There's a bug that looks like this? Well, up here, we got them damn bugs. All them bugs that you see in your fishing tackle store, they're up here. Scary. No, it's not a cockroach. It's actually, I'm going to get a picture of one this year. They're actually quite gorgeous. They're jet black. They're actually a nice-looking bug. Not a fan of bugs, but they're actually a nice-looking bug. You know? They're a nice-looking bug. And here is... Apparently, I'm under attack here. Hold on. What are you saying on... What does that mean, Billiam? Mike, were you making fun of me behind my back while I was reading?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. All right, I believe you.
I'm trying to remember if I picked my nose or not. Didn't know you had the camera on.
Oh, the camera's always on. Maybe... Did Mike have a pick? If you're on Periscope, please let us know if Mike had a pick or not. Because that's something we can bug him about. It's the way we do things around here. So, coming up in about a minute, we're going to start closing out the show. But I do want to remind people that we're going to rock out for a little bit. We're going to rock out for a little bit. Mike's going to be a party pooper. He's going to go to Betty Bye because he had a hard day of driving today. The conditions aren't really the best up here.
Nope.
The roads are kind of icy. And
I'll party tomorrow.
But he says he's going to party with us
I'll
tomorrow.
party tomorrow.
He's going to party tomorrow.
So
what we're going to do is I invite all of you to go to periscope.tv. That's periscope.tv/spaced out radio. We're going to party it up for a little bit. Not too long. We're not going to go 3 hours like we have the last couple of times.
Jesus.
But maybe an hour. We're going to rock it out. So I'll answer any of your questions that you guys have. My questions for you. And we'll play some good music. So all you got to do is come on in and hang out where the water is fine. You know? Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL playing in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Also, the lead guitarist for Sons of Apollo. Now, if you haven't seen or heard them, go on YouTube. Check out Sons of Apollo. Great music. Mr. Bumblefoot rocks us in and out of every single show, being the official music of SOR. We want to say a big thank you for Mr. Tom Sanger coming on into Spaced Out Radio Land today to go the distance with us, talking about UFOs, talking about disclosure, talking about Roger, the telepathic ET, giving him downloads. Great story it was tonight. Tomorrow night on the program, we have Gail Nix Jackson coming into the program. We are going to be talking the JFK assassination. Why? Because Gail's grandfather filmed the infamous Nix film that was held back by the FBI. Much like the Zapruder film, but maybe shows a little bit more. We're going to find out more about that tomorrow night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to say thank you to everyone so far who has donated to our GoFundMe account. That's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. As we continue to try and raise money and funds to build a brand new studio here at SOR headquarters. We really appreciate all of you taking the time to help us out with that. And if you can continue the support, share the post or whatever, we really appreciate it. I want to say a big thank you to everybody listening at home, rocking away in your car, at work, wherever you may be. A big shout out to everyone paying attention to us on Periscope.tv tonight, at Twitter, at the hashtag SpacedOutRadio, on Spreaker. You know who you are. You guys were awesome tonight. And of course, we have the Veterans Club the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. Thank you so much for doing everything to make this show popular and a success, because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, you need to take us home. That's what you need to do. Let's do this thing. See you over on Periscope.